Our history books have gotten the story of ancient trade profoundly wrong. For generations, we pieced together the past from clay tablets and crumbling scrolls, imagining a world of isolated empires and tentative, short voyages. But the real record of global connection was never in a library. It was waiting, silent and preserved, on the ocean floor. This is not just a list of old ships. This is a journey through 15 ancient shipwrecks, each one a sealed time capsule that completely rewrote a chapter of maritime history. By the end, you will see a map of human commerce transformed, revealing a planet linked by sea lanes millennia earlier than anyone dared to believe. What secrets did a Bronze Age vessel carry that rewired our understanding of entire civilizations? How did a single cargo in the Java Sea prove the existence of a forgotten economic superhighway? The seabed holds stories of ambition, innovation, and connections that defy our oldest assumptions. What do you believe is still waiting to be discovered in the deep? The first definitive proof came from a single, sunken ship found by a sponge diver in the late 20th century. Off the rugged coast of southern Turkey, near the Cape of Uluburun, rested a vessel that had not sailed for over 3,000 years. Its wooden hull had long since dissolved, but its cargo, an astonishing collection of raw materials and finished goods, lay scattered across the seabed in a silent, sun-drenched tableau. This was not merely an old ship. It was a floating warehouse, a snapshot of the entire known world from around 1300 before the Common Era. For the first time, archaeologists could hold in their hands the physical evidence of a trade network so vast and intricate it defied everything previously assumed about the Bronze Age. The inventory recovered from the Uluburun wreck reads like a merchant's ledger from a forgotten global economy. There were 10 tons of copper ingots shaped like ox hides from the island of Cyprus. Alongside them were ingots of tin, a metal so rare it had to be sourced from as far away as modern Afghanistan or Central Asia. Alone, these two materials were the essential ingredients for bronze, the very foundation of the era's technology, weaponry, and art. But the ship carried far more than metal. There were blocks of vibrant cobalt blue glass from Mesopotamia or Egypt, raw ivory from African elephants, precious ebony wood, and beads of Baltic amber that had traveled an unimaginable distance from the cold north. The pottery on board told a story of personal journeys, with storage jars from Canaan, drinking cups from Mycenaean Greece, and a golden scarab bearing the name of the Egyptian queen Nefertiti. This single vessel, lost on a routine voyage, completely rewrote the economic history of the ancient world. Before its discovery, scholars pictured the great kingdoms of the Bronze Age, Egypt, the Hittites, Mycenae, as powerful but largely insular empires. Trade was thought to be limited, cautious, and conducted over short distances through a slow chain of intermediaries. The Uluburun wreck shattered that view. Here was direct, undeniable proof of a complex, multinational maritime system operating at a staggering scale. A ship from perhaps Canaan or Cyprus was carrying goods from at least 7 different cultures, connecting continents and seas in one coordinated commercial journey. This was not primitive barter. This was a sophisticated, organized, and truly international economy, functioning over 3 millennia ago. It revealed a world already deeply interdependent, where the fate of empires could be linked by the safe passage of a single ship through the Mediterranean waves. Yet the story of maritime trade begins long before the age of bronze and gold. To find its true origins, we must travel even further back in time, to a vessel so ancient it predates the pyramids of Egypt. Resting in the deep blue waters near the Greek island of Dokos lies a silent witness from a world almost forgotten, the oldest confirmed shipwreck ever discovered by humanity. This humble wreck, dating from around 2,700 to 2,200 years before the Common Era, belongs to the early Helladic period, a time before palaces, before written records, and before the grand empires we often associate with ancient history. Its discovery did something profound. It pushed back the clock on organized Aegean seafaring by more than 1,000 years, revealing a maritime world that was active and connected at a scale no one had previously imagined. What did this pioneering ship carry? There were no gleaming ingots of copper, no golden scarabs, no precious ivory. Its cargo was one of beautiful simplicity, consisting of hundreds of clay pots, simple stone tools, and utilitarian millstones. These were not treasures for kings but the essential goods of everyday life, likely transported between small coastal communities and islands. And that is precisely what makes the Dokos wreck so revolutionary. Its importance lies not in luxury but in proof of routine. This vessel was not on a rare, perilous expedition. It was a working boat, part of a regular, established network of exchange that moved practical commodities across the Aegean Sea. Think of it as the ancient equivalent of a delivery truck, a vital link in a supply chain that connected early farming villages, allowing them to share resources, ideas, and technologies. This discovery completely rewrites the early chapters of maritime history. Before Dokos, scholars could only speculate about seafaring in this distant era, perhaps picturing occasional, cautious trips close to shore. The wreck's existence and the sheer volume of its mundane cargo proves something far more significant. It shows that organized maritime trade was not a late development born from complex states. Instead, it was a foundational activity, a driving force that helped build those very communities and set the stage for everything that followed. The networks that would one day carry the riches of the Uluburun ship were being woven, thread by simple thread, over a millennium earlier by traders in vessels just like this one. So, while it carried only pottery and stone, the Dokos shipwreck carries an immense historical weight. It reveals that the urge to connect, to trade, and to explore by sea is far older and far more deeply rooted in the human story than we ever knew. But the Uluburun was not the only Bronze Age ship to tell a surprising story. Just decades earlier, another wreck near the Turkish coast had already begun to challenge assumptions, though its true meaning would only become clear with time. Off the rugged Cape of Gelidonia, a ship from the late 13th century before the Common Era lay broken on the seabed, its cargo a testament to a very different, yet equally vital, strand of the ancient economy. When it was first discovered in the late 1950s, researchers believed it was a Canaanite vessel, a simple merchant ship from the Levant. This initial interpretation fit the established narrative of the time. But history, especially history written on the ocean floor, has a way of correcting itself. The man who led this correction was a young archaeologist named George Bass. His work on the Gelidonia wreck would become legendary, not just for what he found, but for how he found it. This was the first ever complete scientific excavation of an ancient shipwreck conducted entirely underwater, setting the standard for all maritime archaeology to follow. And what Bass and his team carefully mapped and recovered forced a complete rethink of the ship's identity and purpose. The cargo was not the pristine, finished goods of a luxury trader. Instead, the hold was filled with the heavy, practical tools of an ancient recycling operation. There were broken bronze tools, worn-out weapons, and lumps of scrap metal, all carefully gathered. Alongside this scrap were pure copper ingots, stone tools for working metal, and perhaps most tellingly, a collection of anvils and hammers. This was not a shipment of new materials to a palace. This was the mobile workshop of an itinerant metalsmith, a Bronze Age technician sailing from port to port. He would have collected scrap metal from various communities, melted it down with fresh copper on his portable anvils, and reforged it into new tools and objects right there on the coast, a one-man factory responding to local demand. This discovery added a crucial, gritty new layer to our understanding of Bronze Age trade. We already knew from Uluburun about the high-stakes commerce in raw materials between kings. Gelidonia revealed the vital, decentralized network that existed beneath it. It showed us the practical, circular economy of the ancient seas. Metal was far too valuable to simply throw away. Its recycling was a specialized profession, and these traveling smiths were essential agents of technology transfer, repairing communities and spreading metallurgical skills with every voyage. The ship itself, once thought to be Canaanite, was later reanalyzed. Its stone anchors and some pottery suggested it might have been Cypriot or even from the Aegean world. This shift underscores a deeper truth the wreck revealed. In this era, ideas and expertise were as mobile as the goods themselves. The identity of the sailor mattered less than the indispensable service he provided, a service that literally reshaped the metal backbone of the ancient world, one patch of coastline at a time. Yet the story of maritime innovation is rarely one of sudden revolution. More often, it is a quiet evolution, a slow blending of old wisdom with new ideas. This subtle process of change is perfectly captured by a humble vessel that sank off the coast of Israel in the 5th century before the Common Era, a ship now known as Madrague Michael. Discovered in the late 1980s, this wreck is a time capsule from a world in flux, the era of the mighty Persian Achaemenid Empire. While Persian kings ruled from inland capitals, the lifeblood of their empire flowed along maritime highways maintained by older, seafaring cultures. The Madrague Michael ship is a rare and precious relic of that system, a Levantine merchant vessel from the heart of Persian-controlled territory. Its construction tells a fascinating story of technological transition. When archaeologists studied its preserved hull, they found a unique hybrid. The shipbuilders had begun with the ancient shell-first method, carefully fitting planks together edge to edge to form a smooth, watertight shell, a technique perfected centuries earlier by the Phoenicians. But then they did something new. Inside this shell, they inserted a complete framework of pre-assembled ribs and braces, a frame-first approach that would become the standard for shipbuilding for the next 2 millennia. This vessel was literally caught in the act of changing history, its hull a physical blueprint of maritime engineering moving from one great era to the next. But a ship is more than its bones. Its purpose is carried in its cargo, and the hold of the Madrague Michael spoke clearly of everyday commerce under imperial peace. It was laden with wine amphorae, the universal container of the ancient Mediterranean, and most tellingly, with a shipment of fine cedar wood from the legendary forests of Lebanon. This cargo is a direct thread to the past. For centuries, the Phoenician cities of the Levant had built their maritime empire on the trade of this very timber, prized across the ancient world for its fragrance and durability. The presence of Lebanese cedar on a 5th-century ship wrecked in Israel is not a coincidence. It is concrete proof. It shows that the sophisticated Phoenician trade networks, far from disappearing, were seamlessly integrated into the Persian imperial system. The Achaemenid rulers did not reinvent the wheel, or in this case, the ship. They provided stability and protection, allowing these ancient maritime highways to operate with renewed efficiency, carrying goods, taxes, and imperial messages across a vast, connected sea. The Madrague Michael wreck, therefore, is more than a ship. It is a document. Its hybrid hull records a moment of technological experimentation, while its cedar and wine attest to the enduring power of old trade routes under a new world order. It gives us hard evidence for the maritime infrastructure that held a continental empire together, one quiet voyage at a time. While empires managed grand networks, the true rhythm of the ancient sea was set by countless smaller voyages, the journeys we rarely hear about. Sunk in the clear waters off the northern coast of Cyprus lies a ship that tells one of these intimate stories with breathtaking clarity. Known as the Kyrenia ship, this humble merchant vessel from the 4th century before the Common Era is perhaps the most perfectly preserved hull we have from the classical Greek world. Its discovery did something remarkable. It shifted our gaze from the majestic warships and royal cargoes to the working life of an ordinary trader, offering a personal window into the Hellenistic economy that no history book could ever provide. When archaeologists raised its remains, they were not just recovering a ship, they were reconstructing a biography. The vessel itself was small, likely manned by a crew of just 4. Its hull, preserved for over 2 millennia in the seabed, showed a history of hard work and careful maintenance. The wood bore the scars of old repairs, with patches and replaced planks telling a story of a well-loved ship that its owners kept sailing season after season, a vital asset in a competitive trade. Its cargo was a snapshot of routine, regional commerce. The hold was packed with over 400 clay jars, amphorae, most stamped with seals from the island of Rhodes, famous for its prized wine. Alongside this liquid cargo were heavy millstones from the volcanic island of Nisyros and a store of almonds, still preserved in their jars. This was not a shipment for a king's cellar. This was a working cargo destined for the markets and kitchens of Cyprus. The wine would be consumed, the millstones would grind grain for daily bread, and the almonds would be eaten. Here was the supply chain of everyday life, frozen in a single, tragic moment. But the Kyrenia ship's story goes deeper than its trade goods. Scattered throughout the wreck were the poignant personal belongings of its crew. There were wooden spoons and plates, ceramic bowls for meals, bronze coins for small purchases in port, and even a set of gaming pieces, hinting at the long hours of waiting between coasts. These simple objects transform the wreck from an archaeological site into a shared space. We can almost hear the creak of the rigging and smell the salt air, picturing those 4 individuals living and working in that cramped wooden world, their lives dependent on the safe delivery of wine and almonds. This is why the Kyrenia wreck completely rewrote a chapter of maritime history. Before its discovery, our understanding of ancient trade was dominated by state-sponsored ventures and luxury items mentioned in official records. The Kyrenia ship proved that the backbone of the maritime economy was this vast, silent network of independent, small-scale traders. These were the individuals who connected islands and coastal towns, distributing the essential commodities that fueled daily existence across the Hellenistic world. They operated outside the grand narratives, yet their collective journeys were what made the intricate web of classical civilization possible. The ship's repeated repairs tell us one final, human truth. This vessel was not disposable. It represented someone's livelihood, a carefully maintained investment. Its loss was not just a statistical entry, but a personal economic disaster for its owner and crew. A reminder that history is built on countless such stories of risk, resilience, and routine passage. The Mediterranean sun still illuminates a different kind of trade route, one paved not with millstones and almonds, but with stolen beauty. In the treacherous waters off the remote Greek island of Antikythera, a storm claimed a Roman merchant vessel around the 1st century before the Common Era. Its discovery over a century ago stunned the world, initially for the breathtaking bronze and marble statues that emerged from the deep, and later for a corroded lump of gears we now call the Antikythera mechanism, an ancient astronomical computer. But beyond these individual marvels, the ship's true historical value lies in its cargo manifest as a whole. This wreck is a frozen moment in a very specific, high-stakes branch of ancient maritime commerce, the systematic transfer of an entire culture's artistic heritage. The hold was a treasure chest of plundered elegance. Alongside the famous statues were delicate glassware from the workshops of Syria and Egypt, gold jewelry, silver coins, and fine furniture fittings. These were not goods produced for export. They were curated spoils, the finest artworks of the Hellenistic world, carefully gathered and packed for a single, luxurious voyage to Italy. This ship provides undeniable, physical proof of a historical process we knew from texts, the wholesale looting of Greek art to satisfy the soaring demand of wealthy Romans. In the centuries following Rome's conquest of Greece, a profound cultural obsession took hold. Roman aristocrats and newly wealthy citizens desired to fill their villas and public spaces with the prestige of Greek culture, and original artworks were the ultimate status symbol. The Antikythera shipwreck shows us this desire in action, transformed into a professional maritime industry. This was not casual piracy. The scale and quality of the cargo, including monumental statues that required special handling and stowage, point to an organized commercial operation. It reveals a network that identified prized works in conquered or client states, arranged for their transport across dangerous seas, and delivered them to a waiting market in Rome. The ship itself was a floating gallery, and its loss offers a sobering lesson. It illustrates how maritime trade routes can carry more than spices and metals. They can also be conduits for the deliberate movement of culture, both through admiration and through appropriation. The statues on that ship were severed from their original contexts, their meanings transformed from public religious or civic monuments into private displays of wealth and power in a foreign land. So, while we marvel at the individual artifacts, the greater story of the Antikythera wreck is one of economic force reshaping a cultural landscape. It shows us the sea not just as a connector of economies, but as a highway for the very soul of civilizations, sometimes traveling in the hold of a merchant ship against its will. While statues symbolized cultural power, the true engine of Rome's expansion was fueled by something far more tangible. In the blue waters off the coast of modern-day France, near the town of La Madrague de Giens, rests the broken hull of a vessel that reveals the staggering industrial scale of this engine. This is not the delicate galley of an art dealer, but the leviathan of a merchant king, a Roman cargo ship from the mid-1st century before the Common Era whose sheer size forced historians to recalibrate their understanding of an entire economy. When archaeologists first surveyed the wreck, they were met with a sight of colossal proportions. The ship's hull, preserved in the seabed, measured over 40 meters in length. To put that in perspective, that is longer than 2 modern city buses placed end to end. Its construction was massively robust, designed not for speed or maneuverability, but for one overwhelming purpose: pure, staggering capacity. And within that cavernous hold, researchers made the count that would rewrite economic history: the shattered remains of over 6,000 clay amphorae. Each of these jars, stamped with Italian markings, was designed to hold about 25 liters of wine. Do the math. This single vessel was carrying 150,000 liters of fine Italian wine on its final voyage. That is enough to fill a small swimming pool, a floating vineyard destined for the provinces of Gaul. Before the discovery of the Madrague de Giens wreck, scholars understood that Rome traded with its provinces. But the scale was imagined as modest, a trickle of luxury goods to supply Roman colonists and local elites. This shipwreck shattered that assumption completely. It presented undeniable physical proof of a maritime operation so vast it can only be described as industrial. The construction of a ship this large represented a monumental investment of capital, labor, and materials. Its cargo represented the coordinated output of countless Italian vineyards, potters' workshops, and dockyard laborers. This was not a tentative trade route. It was a high-volume commercial pipeline, a veritable sea-borne conveyor belt pumping the liquid symbol of Roman culture into the heart of newly conquered territories. The implications are profound. This wreck rewrites the economic history of the late Roman Republic. it shows us that the subjugation of Gaul was followed immediately by its integration into a voracious consumer market. The local Gallic elites, and perhaps even broader populations, were developing a taste for Italian wine, and Roman merchants were mobilizing on an unprecedented scale to satisfy that demand. The sea lane between Italy and southern France must have been a busy highway, dotted with these giant vessels, each one a testament to the commercial machinery that both funded and solidified Roman power. The loss of the Madrague de Giens was a financial catastrophe for its owner, but for us, it is an irreplaceable ledger. It quantifies the ambition of Roman commerce in a way no written source ever could, revealing a republic that was not just a military superpower, but an economic one, mastering the logistics of mass export to build an empire, one enormous shipload of wine at a time. But the story of ancient trade is not confined to the Mediterranean. For centuries, historians spoke of the Silk Road as a network of dusty overland caravan trails linking China to Rome. Yet whispers persisted of a parallel route, a maritime highway of unimaginable wealth crossing the vast Indian Ocean. For a long time, these whispers were just that, stories in old texts without physical proof. Then, in the late 1990s, a chance discovery by fishermen off a remote Indonesian island changed everything. In the turquoise waters near Belitung Island, they found the remains of a ship unlike any other in Southeast Asia. This was not a local trading canoe. It was a sturdy, sewn plank Arab dhow, a vessel built for the open ocean, and it had been resting there since the 9th century of the Common Era. When archaeologists finally reached the site, they uncovered a cargo so immense, so specific, that it did not just confirm the maritime Silk Road, it rewrote its entire history. The hull was filled to the brim with a single, spectacular type of treasure, over 60,000 pieces of Tang Dynasty ceramics. There were exquisite bowls, elegant vases, and delicate ewers, many in the vibrant green hue of Changsha ware, and others in the creamy white of Ding porcelain. Alongside this mountain of pottery were dazzling items of gold and silver, all meticulously packed within large storage jars for the long sea voyage. Every object was unmistakably Chinese, and the ship was unmistakably Arab. This was the smoking gun, the first concrete archaeological evidence of a direct, long-distance commercial link between two of the world's greatest powers of the age, Tang Dynasty China, and the Abbasid Caliphate centered in Baghdad. Before the Belitung shipwreck, scholars could only theorize about the scale of this maritime exchange, piecing together fragments from scattered port records and travelers' tales. The wreck made it real. It proved that merchants were not simply hopping between coastal ports. They were undertaking daring, transoceanic voyages, loading a single ship in China with a mass-produced, customized cargo intended for a specific market halfway across the world. The ceramics were not just art, they were a commodity produced in industrial quantities for export. This single dhow, therefore, transforms our map of the 9th century world. The Indian Ocean was not a fearsome barrier separating civilizations, as once thought. It was a liquid superhighway, a well-traveled corridor of commerce and cultural exchange. The Belitung ship tells us that a merchant in Canton could commission tens of thousands of pieces, have them loaded onto an Arab vessel whose crew understood the monsoon winds, and send them on a journey of thousands of miles to be unloaded in the Persian Gulf, their final destination perhaps a wealthy household in Baghdad. This wreck connects dots on a global scale, revealing a planet that was interconnected through trade long before the age of European exploration, its waves carrying not just goods, but the very patterns of daily life from one continent to another. Yet the Belitung ship, for all its global importance, tells only one part of the Indian Ocean story. The vast maritime network was not simply a single highway between China and the Middle East, but a complex web of intersecting local and regional routes. A shipwreck discovered in the Java Sea, known as the Intan, provides the definitive proof for this intricate reality. dating from the 10th century of the Common Era, roughly 100 years after the Belitung D. How, the Intan wreck presents a completely different commercial portrait. This vessel was not a dedicated China-Arab express carrier. It was a regional trader, a workhorse of Southeast Asia's own thriving economic sphere, and its cargo rewrites the map of 10th century commerce. When salvagers first uncovered the site, they found a ship filled with a stunningly diverse collection of goods from all points of the compass. There were Chinese ceramics, yes, but of a more everyday variety than the Belitung treasures. Alongside them were delicate glassware, some from distant Persia and others from the rising kingdom of Thailand. Perhaps most fascinating were the ritual objects, including finely crafted bronze vases and ceremonial items that originated from the powerful Srivijayan Empire based on the island of Sumatra. But the true weight of the ship's purpose lay in its hold in the form of massive, practical ingots. The Intan was carrying tons of raw tin and lead, metals crucial for crafting tools, utensils, and currency across the region. This single cargo manifest forces a complete re-evaluation of Southeast Asia's role. For a long time, Western historians viewed this part of the world as a passive crossroads, a mere collection of stopovers where Arab and Chinese merchants met. The Intan wreck shatters that outdated notion. Here was a ship owned, crewed, and operated within Southeast Asia, actively gathering products from its own sophisticated civilizations, like Srivijayan bronze work, and combining them with imported luxuries like Chinese pottery and Middle Eastern glass. It then collected raw materials from one part of the archipelago, like Sumatran tin, to deliver them to metalworking centers in another. The vessel was not just passing through. It was the engine of a vibrant, self-sustaining economic zone. Think of it not as a throughway, but as a bustling marketplace with its own internal logic and dynamic trade. The Intan proves that Southeast Asia in the 10th century was not a cultural or economic backwater. It was a mosaic of interconnected kingdoms and ports engaged in a complex, multi-hub exchange system. A merchant in Java might order bronze ritual items from Sumatra, pair them with Thai glassware to appeal to a different local taste, and use the proceeds from their sale to purchase raw tin for the journey home. This wreck reveals a maritime world of astonishing sophistication, where regional identity and international connection were seamlessly woven together, long before European ships ever entered these waters. The intricate web of Southeast Asian trade was just one spoke in a much larger commercial wheel, one whose true hub lay far to the north. For centuries, the historical spotlight on China's maritime power has focused almost exclusively on the Ming Dynasty voyages of the 15th century, those legendary treasure fleets that sailed to the Indian Ocean. But a discovery at the bottom of the South China Sea has completely shifted that focus, proving that China's golden age of seafaring commerce began centuries earlier. In the 1980s, a team of British maritime explorers searching for an entirely different wreck stumbled upon something extraordinary. Resting in the silty seabed off the southern coast of China was the colossal, intact hull of a merchant ship from the southern Song Dynasty, a vessel now known as Nanhai I. This was not a scattered collection of artifacts. It was a ghost ship, a perfectly preserved time capsule from the 12th or 13th century, buried in a protective cocoon of mud that had safeguarded its wooden structure for over 800 years. The decision was made not to simply excavate it on the seafloor, but to undertake one of the most ambitious archaeological projects in history. The entire ship, along with the surrounding silt and seawater that cradled it, was carefully lifted from the deep and placed inside a massive, custom-built museum aquarium, where excavation could continue in a controlled environment. This unprecedented effort revealed a vessel of staggering proportions and sophistication. The ship was over 30 meters long, built with multiple watertight bulkheads, a revolutionary Chinese innovation that compartmentalized the hull to prevent catastrophic flooding. This was not a coastal barge but a deep-water merchantman, engineered for the open ocean and capable of carrying an almost unimaginable volume of cargo. And what a cargo it was, as archaeologists began the painstaking process of sifting through the silt-filled hull. They recovered a treasure that rewrote the economic history of medieval Asia. The hold contained more than 100,000 individual items. There were exquisite porcelain pieces of every description, from delicate celadon bowls to sturdy storage jars, all mass-produced in the kilns of southern China specifically for export. Alongside this mountain of ceramics were tons of iron ingots, likely bound for metal-poor Southeast Asia, and a vast hoard of Song Dynasty copper coins, the currency that lubricated trade across the entire region. The Nanhai one is more than a shipwreck, it is a floating ledger. Its pristine state of preservation provides an unparalleled, three-dimensional snapshot of China's export industry operating at an industrial scale, fully 2 centuries before the Ming treasure fleet set sail. This single vessel forces a complete rewrite of the narrative. It proves that during the Southern Song period, when northern China was under pressure from neighboring states, the dynasty did not turn inward. Instead, it pivoted powerfully to the sea. A vast, privately run maritime trade network, supported by sophisticated shipyards and bustling port cities like Quanzhou, was already connecting China directly to markets from Korea to Java. The sheer volume of standardized goods on the Nanhai one speaks of a highly organized, demand-driven production system. This wreck shatters the old idea that China was a land-based empire with only a sporadic interest in the oceans. On the contrary, it reveals a maritime superpower in the making, its commercial fleets dominating the South China Sea and beyond, laying the economic and technological foundations that the Ming admirals would later inherit. The story of China's relationship with the sea does not begin with grand imperial voyages, but with the quiet, relentless journeys of countless merchant ships like this one, their holds groaning with the porcelain wealth of a dynasty that had already mastered the art of global trade. But the flow of goods across the medieval world was not just about finished luxuries or bulk commodities. It also depended on substances so humble and yet so vital that their trade could shape the destiny of nations. Resting in the calm waters of the Ligurian Sea off the coast of Italy lies a ship that tells this exact story. Known as the Santo Spirito, this Genoese merchant vessel sank in the early 15th century, carrying a cargo that seems unremarkable at first glance, tons of a dull, grayish mineral known as alum. Yet this single shipment, lost on a routine voyage, illuminates a hidden geopolitical web that held the late medieval economy together. Alum was not a precious metal or a fine spice. It was a chemical, a fixative essential to the booming European textile industry. Without it, the vibrant dyes used on wool and silk would simply wash out or fade quickly, turning rich fabrics into dull, worthless cloth. For centuries, Europe had relied on alum from mines in Asia Minor, a region that by the early 1400s was controlled by the rising Ottoman Empire. This created a delicate and fascinating situation. The Santo Spirito was a Genoese ship carrying Ottoman-mined alum, destined for the dye works of Italy and Flanders. Its very existence is physical proof of a complex, pragmatic alliance between a powerful Christian maritime republic and a powerful Muslim empire. Genoa, through skillful diplomacy and commercial treaties, secured exclusive access to this critical Ottoman resource. In return, the Ottomans gained a reliable, wealthy trading partner and a steady flow of silver. The wreck of the Santo Spirito, therefore, rewrites a chapter of maritime history by adding a crucial layer of high-stakes geopolitics. It shows us that the sea lanes were not just conduits for goods but for intricate statecraft. The safe passage of this humble cargo was a matter of international agreement, a thread in a fragile peace woven from mutual economic need. The loss of the ship was more than a financial blow to its Genos owners. It represented a rupture in a supply chain that entire industries and cities depended upon. This wreck forces us to see beyond the romance of trade to its raw, strategic necessities, revealing how the color and wealth of Renaissance Europe literally depended on minerals hauled across the sea under the protection of a carefully negotiated truce between worlds. Yet the Santo Spirito's story of pragmatic trade is a stark contrast to the darker, more chaotic voyages that began unfolding across a new ocean. In the shallow, treacherous waters of the Molasses Reef, part of the Turks and Caicos Islands, rests the broken skeleton of a ship that is a ghost from a forgotten dawn. Known simply as the Molasses Reef wreck, this vessel is the oldest known European shipwreck ever discovered in the Americas, dating from the very early 1500s. Its identity is a profound mystery, a blank page from a period of history that was often deliberately left unrecorded. This is not the grand Galleon of later Spanish treasure fleets. This is a small, early Caravel, the workhorse of the age of exploration, and its silent presence on the seafloor completely rewrites the early timeline of European activity in the New World. Before its discovery, the documented history of Spanish shipwrecks in the Americas began decades later with the established colonial system. The Molasses Reef wreck pushes that evidence back into the shadowy, tumultuous years immediately following Columbus's voyages, a time of frantic, unregulated expeditions where the rules had not yet been written. The ship itself offers few clear answers, only haunting clues. Its construction is typically Spanish, but it carried no manifest, no nameplate, and no definitive log. Its cargo was a scattered collection of early European artifacts that speak of a harsh, frontier existence. Archaeologists found wrought iron tools, parts of weapons like crossbows and early arquebuses, and simple personal items such as olive jars for food and a single, delicate silver ring. There were no chests of gold or silver, no precious gems. This was the practical toolkit of survival and conquest, not the loot of a successful empire. The ambiguity of the ship's purpose is its most revealing feature. Historians have debated its mission for decades. Was it a slaving vessel sent to capture individuals from the islands? Was it an exploration ship, blown off course and lost while searching for new lands or passages? Or was it perhaps involved in illicit activities like smuggling, operating far from the eyes of the Spanish crown, in a realm where authority was still just a rumor? This very uncertainty is the lesson the wreck teaches us. It forces us to confront the raw, disordered reality of those first decades after 1492. The Molasses Reef wreck is a tangible relic of a period that was not a neat, organized conquest, but a scattered and often brutal scramble. Its discovery sheds a stark, archaeological light on the poorly recorded chaos that followed Columbus, a time when countless small ships like this one ventured into the unknown on ambiguous missions, many of them vanishing without any trace in the historical record. This shipwreck, therefore, rewrites history not by providing a clear answer, but by embodying a profound question. It stands as a memorial to the forgotten first wave, the anonymous vessels and crews who navigated a new world of both opportunity and profound hardship. Their stories lost to the sea, but their silent hulls waiting to tell us that the dawn of the Atlantic world was far more complex and far earlier than our history books ever recorded. The chaos of the Molasses Reef gives way to a different kind of wreck, one that speaks not of illicit adventure, but of a grand, official dream that shattered against the shore. In the quiet, murky waters of Pensacola Bay, Florida, lie two silent witnesses to one of Spain's most ambitious and catastrophic colonization attempts in North America. Known as the Emanuel Point Shipwrecks, these vessels were part of the fleet of Tristan de Luna, who in 1559 was tasked with establishing a permanent Spanish foothold deep in the interior of La Florida. Their discovery provides the earliest archaeological evidence of a colonization fleet in what is now the continental United States, and their cargo rewrites our understanding of Spain's strategy, revealing an effort far more complex and fragile than the simple quest for treasure. When archaeologists began to recover artifacts from the first wreck, they found no gold or silver. Instead, the seabed was scattered with the practical, heavy supplies needed to build a new world from nothing. There were Spanish olive jars, once filled with wine, oil, and water, essential for survival. There were fragments of Majolica pottery, the fine tableware meant for the colony's leaders, and simple cooking pots for everyday use. Tools for construction and farming, iron nails, and lead shot for hunting and defense were all part of this sunken inventory. This was not a raiding party's loot, but a community's foundation, carefully packed for a voyage intended to end not with a return to Europe, but with the birth of a new settlement. The story these wrecks tell is one of monumental ambition meeting brutal reality. Tristan de Luna's mission was to establish a colony at Ochus, near modern-day Pensacola, as a base to push inland. His fleet carried over 1,500 soldiers, colonists, and Aztec allies from Mexico. But just weeks after arrival, a powerful hurricane, perhaps the first recorded in North American colonial history, struck the bay. It destroyed most of the fleet at anchor, including these two ships, scattering vital supplies and stranding the expedition. The colony, crippled from the start, struggled for 2 years before being abandoned. This is the profound significance of the Emanuel Point wrecks. They are archaeological proof of Spain's vast, inland colonization strategies that existed alongside the famous treasure fleets. For every galleon sailing for Mexico or Peru, there were vessels like these, loaded with ceramics and tools instead of silver, aiming to transplant a way of life. Their failure, etched into the broken timbers and scattered provisions, highlights the immense vulnerability of these enterprises. A single storm could erase years of planning and investment, dooming a colonial venture before it ever truly began. These ships force us to see the Spanish Empire not as an unstoppable force, but as a desperate, often improvisational project, where the success of an entire geopolitical gambit could rest on the strength of an anchor line in an unfamiliar bay. The wrecks are a time capsule of a pivotal moment, a dream of conquest that sank quite literally before it could ever walk ashore. The grandest ships of this era sailed not to build colonies but to sustain empires. In the deep, dark waters off the coast of Cartagena, Colombia, rests the most legendary shipwreck of all, the Spanish galleon San José. Sunk in June of 1708, its story is synonymous with treasure, with a cargo of gold, silver, and emeralds from the mines of Peru so vast its modern value is measured in the billions. Yet to see the San José only as a treasure chest is to miss its true historical significance. This shipwreck rewrites our understanding of the 18th century by revealing the terrifyingly direct link between New World resources and the battlefields of Europe. The San José did not sink in peacetime. It was destroyed during the War of the Spanish Succession, a brutal, continent-wide conflict over who would rule Spain, and by extension, its global empire. The galleon was part of a treasure fleet, a lifeline of liquid capital desperately needed by the Spanish crown to pay its armies, hire its allies, and keep its war machine functioning. When an English squadron engaged the Spanish fleet that night, the explosion that sent the San José to the bottom was not just a naval victory, it was a catastrophic economic strike. The loss of that capital severely weakened Spain's position in the war, altering the geopolitical balance of power. This single event, preserved on the seabed, makes an abstract historical force utterly concrete. The silver pesos and gold ingots in its hold were not mere symbols of wealth, they were the ammunition of 18th century empire. They were mined by indigenous and forced labor in the Andes, transported across the Pacific and over the Isthmus of Panama, loaded onto a galleon in Portobelo, and sent across the Atlantic with one explicit purpose: to fund a dynastic war being fought in Flanders and Italy. The maritime trade route was the financial artery of the state, and the English understood that severing it was as decisive as winning a battle on land. This is why the modern salvage of the San José remains one of the most contentious issues in maritime archaeology. Its discovery reignited centuries-old legal and diplomatic battles. Who rightfully owns this sunken capital? Is it the modern nation of Colombia in whose waters it rests? Is it Spain, which owned the ship as an extension of its royal navy? Or do the descendants of the indigenous communities whose labor extracted that wealth have a moral claim? The wreck is no longer just a historical site. It is a mirror reflecting unresolved questions of colonial legacy, national patrimony, and the very meaning of cultural heritage. The San José's treasure, therefore, is twofold. Its physical cargo illustrates the brutal, globalized economics of early modern warfare. But its ongoing story teaches us that the past is never truly buried, that the echoes of those long-ago voyages and conflicts continue to shape international law and dialogue today. Yet a ship's final resting place is often far from its moment of greatest glory. In the sheltered waters of Newport Harbor, Rhode Island, rests a vessel whose name is synonymous with discovery, but whose wreck tells a quieter, more complex tale. For over 2 centuries, the final location of Captain James Cook's HMS Endeavour was one of maritime history's most enduring mysteries. This was the sturdy Whitby collier that, between 1768 and 1771, carried Cook on his first epic voyage of Pacific exploration, charting New Zealand and the east coast of Australia, and forever altering the European map of the world. Its significance, however, is not found in a hold filled with trade goods. Instead, this wreck represents the very infrastructure of exploration, the humble working ships that made the age of discovery possible, and in doing so, laid the precise nautical groundwork for the global trade networks that would follow. The story of its rediscovery is a masterclass in historical detective work. After its famous voyage, the Endeavour was sold, renamed the Lord Sandwich, and relegated to the unglamorous life of a naval transport vessel. During the American Revolutionary War, it was part of a British fleet in Newport when, in 1778, it was deliberately scuttled by its own crew to create a blockade and prevent French ships from entering the harbor. There it lay, its identity slowly fading from memory, one anonymous wooden hull among a cluster of wrecks in the muddy harbor floor. For archaeologists, confirming its identity became a painstaking puzzle. They meticulously matched the dimensions and construction details of the recovered timbers to 18th century shipbuilding records for Whitby colliers. They analyzed tree rings in the wood to date its construction. They recovered artifacts consistent with a vessel used as a troop transport, like fragments of ceramic and glass, but nothing that screamed of its legendary past. The identification was built on a mountain of circumstantial evidence, all pointing overwhelmingly to one conclusion. This process itself rewrites a chapter, reminding us that history is not always marked by treasure, but often by the slow, careful accumulation of clues. So why does this modest wreck belong on a list that rewrote the history of global trade? Because the Endeavour is a tangible, physical link between 2 eras. Cook's voyages were not primarily about commerce, they were missions of scientific inquiry and imperial mapping. Yet the incredibly accurate charts his crew produced, the detailed records of winds, currents, and safe harbors, became the essential playbook for the merchants who came next. The Endeavour's path through the Pacific effectively transformed a vast, unknown ocean into a navigable space. It proved that long, sustained voyages were possible, and it identified the resources and communities that would soon become nodes in a new worldwide web of exchange. The ship itself, in its later life as a transport, participated in the Atlantic world's conflicts, which were themselves driven by competition over the very trade routes exploration had opened. From a collier to a discovery vessel to a sunken blockade, the Endeavour's career mirrors the journey from exploration to exploitation. Its wreck connects the age of wonder to the age of commerce, a silent piece of timber on the American seabed that speaks to the moment European maritime reach became truly, irrevocably global. 15 shipwrecks scattered across millennia and oceans, each told its own unique story. But when we step back and view them as a single, interconnected collection, a far grander narrative comes into focus. These are not just isolated tragedies, they are data points in a global experiment, and together they force a complete rewrite of the human story. They shatter old paradigms and reveal patterns of connection so deep they redefine our very understanding of civilization's progress. First, they prove our timelines were profoundly wrong. For generations, history textbooks presented long-distance maritime trade as a relatively late development, the achievement of classical empires or the age of exploration. The Dokos wreck, over 4,000 years old, and the Uluburun ship, with its globe-spanning cargo from the Bronze Age, demolished that idea. They push the evidence for complex, organized seafaring back by millennia, revealing that the ambition to cross open water and connect with distant cultures is one of humanity's oldest and most persistent drives. The world was linked far earlier and far more consistently than our written records alone ever suggested. These wrecks also reveal an ancient economy of staggering scale and sophistication, one that went far beyond the trade of royal luxuries. We once pictured ancient commerce as a trickle of silks and spices for the elite. The physical evidence from the seafloor tells a different story. The Madrague de Giens, carrying a swimming pool's worth of wine, and the Nanhai one, with its 100,000 pieces of export porcelain, show us industries operating at near-industrial levels. The Gelidonia wreck, a floating recycling yard, and the Intan ship, carrying raw tin and lead, highlight the vital trade in bulk materials and practical expertise that fueled everyday life across entire regions. Perishable goods like the Kyrenia ship's almonds or the Santo Spirito's alum formed the invisible backbone of economies, their importance only revealed when a shipment was lost. Perhaps the most powerful pattern is the consistent evidence of cultural blending. These ships were microcosms of a connected world. The Belitung was an Arab vessel filled with Chinese treasure. The Mag and Michael ship bore a hull that fused Phoenician and Greek engineering. The crews themselves were likely multicultural, as the personal items from the Kyrenia wreck or the diverse artifacts on the Intan suggest. This was not a world of pure, isolated cultures trading at arm's length. It was a world of hybrid technologies, shared nautical knowledge, and Creole crews, where ideas mixed as freely as the goods in the hold. So what does this collective evidence ultimately tell us? It argues that the history of global trade can no longer be seen as a series of isolated golden ages, like the Phoenician era or the Silk Road period, separated by dark ages of disconnect. Instead, the maritime archaeological record paints a picture of a continuous, evolving web. A network might fray, shift, or change its central hubs from the Bronze Age Mediterranean to the medieval Indian Ocean, but the connections themselves never fully vanished. They adapted, finding new routes, new commodities, and new participants. The Endeavour's charts built upon knowledge gathered from centuries of earlier voyages, just as the Roman wine trade flowed along paths first sailed by Greek and Phoenician merchants. This is the paradigm shift. We now understand that the ocean has always been a highway, not a barrier. These 15 shipwrecks, from the simplest pottery carrier to the most legendary treasure galleon, are the physical proof. They show us a human story written not in the rise and fall of empires alone, but in the relentless, enduring rhythm of departure, voyage, and exchange. The next time you look at a map, try to see not just the land masses, but the ancient sea lanes between them, still whispering with the stories of countless ships and sailors who are weaving our world together long before we ever thought to call it global. This continuous rewriting of history is the true treasure these wrecks provide. They are not simply lost ships, but irreplaceable primary sources, time capsules that speak with a clarity no later copyist or historian could ever match. Each broken hull and scattered cargo is a piece of a grand global puzzle. With every discovery, from the humble Dokos trader to the majestic Nanhai one, another piece clicks into place, and our map of the ancient global economy grows more detailed, more vibrant, and undeniably more interconnected. We now see lines of exchange where our textbooks once showed empty ocean. Yet for all we have learned, we must remember this profound truth. The vast majority of the seabed remains a perfect, dark archive, utterly unexplored. The stories we have just traced are only the first chapters recovered from the deep. Future generations of archaeologists, equipped with new technologies, will undoubtedly descend to sites we cannot yet imagine. They will recover cargoes that will challenge our current understanding, forcing yet another revision of the human story. What other networks, what other civilizations, what other forgotten chapters of connection are still waiting in the silent depths? The history of global trade is a book still being written, its next pages resting on the ocean floor. If you found this journey through sunken time capsules compelling, consider subscribing. Our channel is dedicated to unraveling historical mysteries and bringing the latest archaeological discoveries straight to you, helping to piece together the incredible, interconnected story of our past.